Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I am so thrilled to be joined by Doug Leech. Doug has a BS degree in accounting from Penn State University and worked at Ernst & Young in Pittsburgh before founding Ascension Recovery Services, also known as Ascension RS. Through his own struggles with addiction and subsequent recovery, Mr. Leech developed a passion for helping those suffering from the disease of addiction and set out to increase access to substance use disorder treatment across the country. The mission of Ascension RS is to expand access to care by opening fully integrated, comprehensive, and person-centered substance use disorder and co-occurring mental health disorder treatment centers across the country, providing for all who need treatment, regardless of insurance type or ability to pay, advancing behavioral health equity. Ascension RS has been recognized as one of the fastest growing healthcare companies in the country and is a leader in developing and managing behavioral health treatment centers. Ascension RS has opened dozens of treatment centers across the full continuum nationally, creating thousands of jobs and building lasting partnerships with hospitals, payers, and community service providers. Currently, Ascension RS is opening 2 large portfolios of substance use disorder treatment centers spanning 7 states, branded Kathy Ireland Recovery Centers and Wise Path Recovery Centers. Ascension RS was recently ranked number 46 for fastest growing healthcare businesses by Inc. 5000 in 2021. Doug is the 2020 recipient of the Milan Pushkar Entrepreneur of the Year Award and also serves on a number of healthcare boards of directors nationally, including holding leadership positions on the boards of Third Horizon Strategies, Divided Sky Foundation, and West Virginia Sober Living. Doug has established charitable funds and foundations for patient care around the country to provide treatment for those who can't afford it. Citing a desire to inspire student entrepreneurs, Penn State Smeal College of Business alumnus Doug Leech and his wife Layla have established and endowed the Douglas M. and Layla A. Leech Student Experienceship Fund at Smeal. Wow, Doug, I am so thrilled to be talking with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Laura. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I know that typically when I start these conversations, I always ask people to talk about their leadership journey and maybe a little bit about their life journey or life story and career story. And for you, I know those are all very much intertwined. So perhaps we can just start there and let the conversation go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, Laura, I always, when talking about my career and leadership journey, I like to talk about my recovery from addiction and alcoholism. As you said, they're very much intertwined. I like to talk about that because it gives people hope. Folks that are still struggling with addiction and alcoholism, hearing that, kind of where I was and how bad things were and that things got better, it just gives hope. And it certainly did for me whenever I went through treatment. It was, one of the most impactful things is hearing other people's stories, because I felt totally alone. I felt like I was just on an island by myself. No one was experiencing what I was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And then to hear that, it's not just something that some other people have, but there's lots of people that have this and millions of people do recover, gave me hope. So I do like talking about all that.
Yeah. So take us back. Go ahead and start off and share a little bit about that story and what led to where you are today.
Yeah. So I've been fascinated with business since I was, 4 or 5 years old. It seems crazy, but I would carry around my dad's briefcase whenever I was a little kid. He was, my dad was a banker, and he would have Federal Reserve bulletins, and these Federal Reserve bulletins would have interest rates and yield curves and all this type of stuff. It was basically a book of numbers. And I used to sit there with that thing and page through, had no idea what it was, but
you're probably the only one doing that.
Exactly. So we still laugh about that I just sit there and just look at numbers and, so I was always fascinated by business. I remember, in stories of this, but at age 5, 6, I had a little business that I started, and this business was I called it Mr. Fix It. So if I broke a toy, I could have my mom or dad bring it to me and I'd fix it. And,
I love it.
Something. And, grandparents and things like that. But I just was always so fascinated and wanted to be in business. And so throughout my childhood, I was always inspired by people that were successful, that built companies. And, as I got into elementary school and then junior high, that was just something that always fascinated me. I always wanted to learn, and I learned, I think you can learn from everybody. You can learn things to do and not to do. So, I never had a sense in my life of jealousy of people, envy. It was never like that person's successful, and but it was, let me find people that are doing things that I want to do, or making an impact that I would like to make, and how are they doing it, and learn from them. So so always fascinated by business. It was after graduating high school, I went to University High School in Morgantown, played sports, lots of friends, just kind of a normal kid. And then I went to Penn State, and I went to Penn State largely because my dad went there. He majored in accounting, and I was just very familiar with that. And my dad would always tell me that accounting is the language of business, and if you get an accounting degree and you understand that, you can really do anything in business. So that was, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. So getting up to Penn State and starting in college, I started having depression and anxiety, and it came out of nowhere. Came on pretty strong. In hindsight, I look back through my life as a kid, and I always did have a lot of anxiety. I had no idea what to call it. It hadn't exacerbated until I was up at Penn State, and really like my spring semester of my freshman year, it got really, really bad. And it was at that point that I started seeing a psychiatrist, and first started taking Prozac. I think I was still 18 years old. So that was my introduction to kind of behavioral health issues. It was so embarrassing, Laura. I mean, like, I would have rather told someone I robbed a store than I'm struggling with depression.
It's just probably, wasn't talked about a lot at that time. And there, even when you mentioned Prozac, there's probably not even, I would say at that point, a lot of medications even.
There wasn't, and it was not talked about. I don't think there's any more people struggling with depression and anxiety today than there was, back then. It's just people didn't talk about it. People didn't get help. So you end up just kind of like white knuckling it. And I looked through my, first few years at Penn State, and I loved Penn State. I loved being up there. I was so proud to be at Penn State. I enjoyed accounting. Really, it just made sense to me. I was always a numbers guy, but I would struggle to get to class. You know what I mean? I would skip class all the time. And then in my mind, it's like, well, I'm skipping class because, I just kind of felt like I was just a poor student. You know what I mean? As opposed to, and it was even easier for me to think, well, I'm going to sleep in. But it was depression, anxiety. So, my grades at Penn State started high, and then over the course of my 4 years there, went down, and actually was a little bit longer than 4 years because I took a semester off. So it's really, it was a part of my life where I'm trying to figure out what's going on. How do I get help? I don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? And so very, very challenging. During that time, it's college. I was in a fraternity house. There's alcohol, and
for sure.
And I would be throughout the week so uncomfortable in my own skin. And then, I would drink Friday, evening, and feel great and have a great time. And then, Saturday morning, that, just shame of depression, anxiety, all these terrible feelings come back over it. And then you drink and you feel better.
I was going to say, it just fuels the fire, right?
It does. And it's worse. You know what I mean? Like, after drinking, then it's even worse than it was before. So it just it's a snowball effect. And I started to get into trouble. And when I was up at Penn State, it's kind of funny looking back, but I would get into a lot of fights. I would, and I kind of thought of myself at that point in time as a tough guy, and like, no one's going to mess with me. it wasn't until I got into recovery that I really learned about that. I was so full of fear. You know what I mean? I
Mm,
was so like, I was terrified. I was uncomfortable, depressed, anxious. And then you mix alcohol with that. And
yeah.
it's like, I'm afraid someone's going to say something. Or if they did, you know, at a bar, everybody says
Yeah.
everything to everybody, bumps into you.
Right.
Well, I can't let people think that, this person, and like, now I look back and people weren't even thinking about me or talking about me. They'd look at me
No.
and think, this is some big moment. So I started to get into trouble. Um, and that was just a very bizarre thing for me. I was always such a good kid through elementary, junior high, high school, all of that. And now getting arrested, and it was just kind of added to the confusion in my head, like
Yeah.
what's going on. I had an injury whenever I was in college and got prescribed pain medication. First it was Vicodin, then it was Percocets, and in a 3 week period of time, I just totally abused those pills. And I
Mm,
remember the first time I took them, I felt better than I had felt, in as long as I can remember, since I was a little
wow.
kid. And so it was really like relief. I hadn't had
Hmm.
it for so long. So I took the pills and I had no anxiety, no depression. I felt, euphoric. It's like I kind of felt good. And so it actually worked, for a very short period of time. And then I was calling back the doctor, getting lots of prescriptions. And eventually that ran out. However many I got, it was over a few week, maybe a month period of time. And then they were
Yeah.
gone. Went back to Penn State. It was kind of like, I always knew that there was that relief that came from these. And so it was always on my mind and it never got out of my mind.
Mm,
Um, I graduated Penn State and had an internship after my junior year at Ernst & Young in Pittsburgh, was offered a job at the end of that internship. So when I graduated Penn State, I moved to Pittsburgh into the same apartment that I was in whenever I had my internship, and started my full-time job at E&Y. And when I went there, I was very serious about my career. I
mhm.
knew that at this point, I knew enough to know when I start drinking, I don't know when I'm going to stop, and I don't know what's going to happen. I
Yeah.
was never in college drinking in the morning till evening, 7 days a week, or anything like that. But it did get
Yeah.
more frequent. Episodes and intoxication was, always elevating, but it was never like an all day, every day thing. So
Hmm.
I didn't think I had a problem. I'm a college kid. Everybody does this,
Sure.
but
That's just what you do.
exactly. I knew enough that whenever I was starting at E&Y that I can't be with coworkers and drinking the way that I drink. So
Hmm.
I somewhat managed it for a period of time, for a couple of years. Would have an episode here and there, but I'd really try to limit, happy hours that I went to,
Yeah.
with coworkers and things like that, because it was just a roll of the dice with me. Started to have some, I would embarrass myself. I would, drink too much at a work function, do something stupid, be embarrassed, and then I'd play cleanup for the next few weeks, try to apologize to people, prove to them like, look, I'm not a bad person, and
Hmm.
all the while, it was progressing. An addiction, alcoholism is a progressive disease. It gets worse over time,
Mm.
not better. So um, I had enough of these incidences at work, coming into work late because I was hungover, things like that. And it was just very clear to me, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like at the same time, not that I was making a lot of money because I wasn't, but I had a paycheck, steady income, and I had some extra cash, and which, as a college kid, I never had. So
Sure.
having some available funds and then being in Pittsburgh, and I kind of linked up with some people that had access to narcotics all the time. So
Hmm.
for me, it was just, it was just a downward spiral really quick. And my intent, Laura, was, these are medicines prescribed by a doctor. I know
Yeah.
what they are. This is not cocaine or heroin.
Yeah.
They're made by,
Safe. Doctors prescribe them.
yeah, some of them made by Mylan Pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
like from Morgantown. And
Yeah.
so to me, it was like, this is not a bad thing. And whenever I, took those early on. So I would get them instead of going out on a Friday night. I'd go to the happy hour, not drink, come back to my apartment, take a couple pain pills, relax, watch a movie, get up and go to work early Saturday morning if it was during busy season. But I wasn't getting into trouble. So to me, it was like, this is a safe alternative.
Yes.
And it's crazy. Like now we sit here in 2023, and everybody, I think, to some extent knows about the opioid epidemic in our country. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's
for sure
so much more known, but back then it was just not known.
No.
So it took me down very, very quickly. And then, eventually I think I was at, a total of 4 or 5 years at Ernst & Young. And, my performance was terrible. I really wasn't even showing up to work. People were concerned about me. Coworkers were talking to me, friends, they were distancing themselves from me, but then coming and saying, hey, like, what's going on? Do you need help? And I just denied everything, and in the back of my mind, I knew everybody knew, you know what I mean? Like it just was not normal behavior, but I couldn't admit it. A partner that I really respected at the Pittsburgh office, and he cared for me. I remember he called me into his office and met with me. And, in my mind, like on one hand, I think this is probably it. I'm going to get fired. The other hand, I think, well, maybe I'm getting promoted because they think I'm so great,
Right.
and so I sit down with him, and he asked me, just as soon as I sat down, how are you? And I said, good, good. How are you? And he said, I'm very concerned about you. If there's anything going on that you're struggling with or that you need help with, you can tell me. I'm not the person that can fix it, but I can help find some solution here. We can get you help. And he asked that, and my response was, what are you talking about? And he said, well, and I'll always remember this. He said, whenever you started here in your internship in 2004 and then started, in 2005, we started to talk about you in the partner meetings. You were getting active in things. You were doing, really good with your work and catching on. And we were putting you on bigger and better jobs in the office. And he said, then there was a period of time where we didn't talk about you. And now the partners are talking about you again, but not in a good way. We have lots of concerns. I said, well, that's interesting, but nothing's wrong. And he asked me again and just said, is there anything that we can help you with? And I said that there wasn't. And his response was, if there's nothing that's wrong or nothing that we can help you with, or, and then it just comes down to work performance and you're not even showing up for work. Like it's just not going to work out. And just immediately I worked, I found another job. And
saw the writing on the wall there.
Oh yeah. Totally saw the writing on the wall. Found another job, and I was so disappointed because I loved Ernst & Young. I loved the company. I loved the work that I did, and my addiction just was keeping me from doing that work and everything. So it was really, really hard, but it would have been even harder to say, I've got a problem, and they were offering that help, and
kudos to that manager or that partner for having that conversation. I'm sure that wasn't an easy conversation, especially again, like I think we just have to remind people, this was not last year. This was in a different time. This was what did you say, like 2006 or somewhere around there?
This was 2008 that this was happening.
Yeah. So these weren't as common of conversations or comfortable conversations, but they were noticing that pattern in you and chose to confront you about it, which I have to give acknowledgement. I'm sure that I know it wasn't an easy conversation for you, but probably not for them either.
Not at all. It was very, very, very awkward. And so my after that point, my addiction had spiraled out of control, maybe another year and a half. And after that year and a half, I was not working, had no place to live. I was just kind of, bouncing around, slept in my car, slept at drug dealer's house, would show
Wow.
up back in Morgantown after not talking to my parents for 3, 4 months. They had no idea where I was and would show up. So it got really, really bad and culminated in an arrest in downtown Morgantown in a blackout, which landed me in the regional jail in West Virginia. And as I came to, in jail and like, learned of my charges and everything, it was devastating. And it was almost, I went through withdrawals in jail, was there for a few weeks,
Yeah.
and, just this is not the place for me. How did I
Mhm.
end up here? And was just miserable. But I got the opportunity to go to treatment out of state, and my mom was terrified for my life. My dad was, my sister was, grandparents, everybody.
Mhm.
My dad put together a plan for where I was going to go to treatment. He worked with folks at WVU, Jim Stevenson, who was chair of behavioral health and a longtime family friend. And there was a 6-month wait list to get into a treatment center, residential, in West Virginia at the time.
Wow.
There's really only 2 residential centers. So they sent me to Hazelden in Center City, Minnesota. Um, so I went out there to treatment, and not believing that I had a problem,
Mhm.
which is just amazing. That, you know what I mean. I'm on felony charges in the regional jail, facing 10 years in prison was my charge,
Yeah.
and still didn't think I had a problem. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like circumstances and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. But what was really impactful for me was being at Hazelden in Minnesota and hearing other people's stories. There was a reunion that was coming through the unit that I was on while I was out there. So I
Hmm.
got to see guys that were there the year before, 5 years before, 10 years before, and they would show up and they spent time on our unit for 2 or 3 days. So smart of Hazelden to do this. I got to
For
see these.
sure.
Yeah, I got to see these men come into my unit and talk about their story. And because in my mind, now I'm here, maybe I need to get sober, maybe this is a problem, but like, how am I ever going to overcome felony charges and da 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 da? And like, I've blown my life, like it.
Yes.
And at the time, I'm 28 years old. I mean, still like young, and but
Yeah.
thinking like I've lost my shot at life. And I
Mhm.
would see guys that were 55, 60 that, got sober 5 years ago, and they rebuilt. And at that point in time, Laura, I didn't want money. I didn't want business success. The only thing I wanted was to be happy, free of this obsession of
Mhm.
drinking and drugging, not having paralyzing depression and anxiety,
Yeah.
being able to wake up in the morning, shower, get a cup of coffee, and be present. Like, that's what I
Mhm.
wanted. So I set the bar pretty low, like that's all that I wanted.
Which,
And
when you break it down, those are the most important factors in life,
they
really.
really are. They really are. Yeah. And I started to have some hope that, okay, well, if I follow this recovery path and go through treatment and follow recommendations from my therapists and doctors and et cetera, and then really embrace recovery, get involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and, you know, it could work for me. If it worked for these
Yeah.
folks, why wouldn't it work for me?
Right. And they're successful and thriving. It's inspiring for you that there's hope.
Yep, exactly. So this whole experience that I had is, after going through treatment, I stayed out there in Minnesota for about a year, came back to Morgantown, went through all my court stuff, and I got a job at a CPA firm in Morgantown. The CPA firm that I came and worked at in Morgantown was the perfect place for me. So it's
Mm.
Vecchio and Company. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, those guys,
Yeah.
Mike
Yeah.
Vecchio, son Matt Vecchio. No one would hire me, after my arrest and everything.
Mm.
I couldn't get a job anywhere. And I
Hmm.
got a job at, what is it called? Like Jersey Mike's
Yep.
sub shop as a delivery driver. And, uh, and then I got the opportunity to work at Vecchio and Company. My dad was friends with Mike Vecchio Sr. and basically said, my son's delivering hoagies. He had has an accounting degree,
Hmm.
was, doing really well at Ernst and Young, and he can't even get a bookkeeping job.
Yeah.
And Mike Vecchio said, I'm, if anybody that knows Mike would just know this about him, but he just said he didn't care what anybody thought about me or any opinion. And if we lose a client because we have, him working here, then, screw him, So
Wow,
I'm like,
I
all right,
love that. That's tremendous.
I know. And so like I went there and I felt like, man, this is great. These people have my back. You know what I mean? And they know that I'm a good
Yeah.
person. They knew me whenever I was a kid and they gave me a shot.
Yeah.
Now I was making less than I made day one out of college. But this is the other thing, Laura. I was so grateful and so happy, and that didn't matter. And
Hmm.
in business today, I see people that they come out of college wanting to make $65,000, $70,000 a year. They want to get promoted the next year.
Yes.
They're owed it, or
Yes.
something. I was making $38,000 a year at 29 years old, at 30 years old,
Mhm.
and I was the most grateful person on planet Earth.
Yeah. And probably the
I
happiest
was
you'd been in, I don't know, 10 years maybe, or but based on that history.
probably more than that, yeah, but
Yeah.
you're right. I was so happy. I had a dingy little apartment, just like, I mean, it just was not nice, very, very cheap. It's all I could afford.
Yeah.
Really old, used car, and I'm working
Hmm.
there, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
And my life had totally changed. And so I really, really wanted to bring this opportunity to West Virginia. Because the other shocking thing is I get back to Morgantown. It's like, cool, let's fit into the recovery scene here and see what's going on. And I realized pretty quickly, like there's a few AA meetings, a couple NA meetings, but are very, very small groups. There were
Not really
no
a scene
living
here.
homes, not really a scene, and no one talking about it.
Mm.
It was just, it blew me away. It's like, because my experience out in St. Paul, Minnesota was recovery was everywhere. You go to a coffee shop and there's three or four people sitting with an AA big book, some other people sitting talking with their sponsors, just all this everywhere you went.
Well, and
And
that's a very supportive community to be surrounded by. That helps you, I would assume, in recovery as well.
100%. It's so important. So I really wanted to bring that to West Virginia. So I started working on a plan to open up what is now West Virginia Sober Living, but it was a sober home on Spruce Street, 206 Spruce Street. It was the first one I opened.
Wow.
And in opening up that home, I still did my accounting job.
Okay.
I went to this is before everybody worked remotely, but I work remote. I said, look, I'm going to continue doing this work for you, but I want to, there's other things that I need to
Yeah.
do. And I want to do these other, but I'll still deliver the work. And so I worked out an arrangement with Vecchio and Co. To where I could do work and still do employee benefit plan audits and things like that for them while working on putting together this 501(c)(3) nonprofit sober living home. And I
Wow.
also started a business called Intervent with a partner in Minnesota, where we were doing drug and alcohol interventions, putting people into treatment. And effectively, what we were doing, Laura, is taking folks from West Virginia and putting them into treatment outside of the state.
Outside.
Yep, because they couldn't get treatment in the state. So
Wow.
I had those three things going on. And what, my definition of leadership and kind of how I look at leadership is there is no substitute for hard work. Like I just see people today that say, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to pull in investors. I mean, I see this multiple times a day, every single day. Get some money from investors. I'm going to hire this person and hire this person, and then they're going to go do it and make it successful. I
Yeah.
don't think that that's ever worked in the history of business.
No. Is that
And
overnight
so,
success story just is out there
yeah,
as this is how it's done, and yet
yep.
none of these businesses actually operate that way.
They just don't. They really, really don't. Because what you see, that's like the tip of the iceberg, but you don't see
Yes.
all the hard work and late nights and failures and just struggles
Yes.
and stuff. So I joined back in Morgantown prior to starting anything. The sober home didn't open up until September of 2013, but
Wow.
beginning of 2012. I joined board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I joined Rotary in Morgantown, started telling my story. I got out into the
Mhm.
community. I was working at the food bank. I was doing all this activity and really learning about the community, getting my name
Wow.
and face out there,
Building relationships.
building relationships and building back my reputation and helping people get into treatment. So I'm just doing all this stuff.
Wow.
And there really wasn't a conversation in Morgantown around addiction or treatment that I wasn't a part of. And there wasn't that many conversations going on at the time, but I was very involved and active. So I started Morgantown Sober Living, and I got rid of my apartment and I moved into that home downtown. So we remodeled the house, and I paid rent on this house. My dad bought the home to us at Spruce, and then he leased it to me. So I had a lease payment that I had to make every month, and it was more than I was making it just the accounting job.
Wow.
And I had all these, the utilities and everything else. So it was kind of right into some, kind of high pressure that you gotta meet these bills. So
that's some motivation though to make it work.
Exactly. And so instead of paying rent at my apartment for $500 a month, which included, all my utilities, well, that's $500 I can contribute to the lease here. I'm doing the accounting work. I'm getting paid, X amount of dollars. That all went to, paying the bills there, getting furniture for the house, things like that. I had my other business, Intervent, that we were doing, work, and it was just getting started, but making a little bit of money. But it all went into starting 206 Spruce Street, Morgantown Sober Living, which is now West Virginia Sober Living. So,
wow.
And as I wanted to hire people there, I needed help, but it was me that was the house manager. I did the drug tests. I did the intakes. I cleaned the house. I did everything. I lived there, and I did accounting work, and I did this other work. So I'd be up early in the morning and work till late at night, and did that for years. So to me, it was getting into business. It was, I need to get some people to come join me. I need help. I don't have the money to pay people. It's not like I can't present an attractive offer to somebody, So, but I would hire folks on a 1099, like as a contractor basis, pay them an hourly rate for just a few hours. It was a low rate, but I said, if you trust me and you dedicate yourself to this, like there's going to be a bigger opportunity for you. I was so confident in myself and my ability to do this. And having gone through addiction and then being in recovery, what could be harder than that? So
I've already made it through that.
I know. So like I knew that I knew and I believed I'd be successful. I did not believe it would be easy, but I just knew I'm going to get involved in this thing and nothing's going to stop me. The reason I felt that way, because I had thought about starting a CPA firm or partnering with the Beccios or something like that. It's just, I just didn't have the passion for, accounting and sitting in an office and doing that stuff. I wanted to combine my business skills and everything that I'd learned throughout my whole life, from reading Federal Reserve bulletins at age 5, to this point. And it was a great opportunity for me to combine both and, really, people wanted to come work with me. It was exciting. It was in the news, like, hey, this recovery home. And as I was getting it started, as we've chatted before about this, but 8 different people in Morgantown sued me.
I was going to say, not everyone was, yay, it's coming.
Yeah, well, 99.9% of the town was, but then there was this very loud vocal group, and they pushed back and they sued me. And it took me longer to get the home open. The expense from all those lawsuits to battle, it was, could have put me under, and kept me from doing it. But in my mind, there's no way these folks are going to do this, and the things that they were saying were so hurtful. It was, like, these people, they're going to bring disease into our community, and we have children in this community. And it's like, are you afraid of me? And like, well, not you. We're talking about the
other people. Yeah.
Other people. It's like, well, I was arrested, had violent, history in my past. Like, I was as bad as it gets, and clean and sober. I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? So like, it's and the folks that were coming, that I knew that were going to come into the home, had children. Like, the last thing on earth that someone in recovery is going to do is mess with a child. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's so, all that pushback, it just strengthened my resolve and made me fight harder. And I knew that they had no basis in this. It was just all stigma um, and discrimination. And so I knew that
Yeah.
I would win, and I did in court. So um, yeah, that was the starting of West Virginia Sober Living. We opened more homes throughout the state. It's a very good sized nonprofit in West Virginia that has 6 recovery homes. We have
Wow.
hundreds of folks living in our programs. We've got a peer recovery coach network that spans multiple counties throughout the state. We have a business that has a contractor's license, and we employ folks that come through, and we remodel homes. We do demolition on treatment centers
Oh,
that we're starting.
yeah.
So it provides jobs, provides income back to the nonprofit.
Wow.
We have a behavioral health license at West Virginia Sober Living and provide counseling services. So it's just a remarkable organization. I'm on the board of directors there and chair of the board, and really support the organization. But we've got a wonderful team there, led
Right.
by John Dower and Christopher and Dan McCauley and Krista White, and they run that program and just do a wonderful job. And I'm supportive of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Is that hard to kind of step away from that? I mean, because I want to hear about the transition into Ascension recovery services, but I could see such an emotional attachment. I'm sure. I mean, you started that, you were there from the beginning, you put in the blood, sweat, tears, the sweat equity and financial equity too. I mean, was that hard to walk away from that? Not walk away, but you know what I mean,
yeah.
in terms of moving on to something else.
Very much so. For me, the decision to start Ascension was, we're doing really, really great work here in West Virginia, making an impact. But my desire was always make the biggest impact and help the most people. So
Yeah.
I was always looking for how do we do that? How can I do that? What's my highest and best use? And that's why I started Ascension Recovery Services. Throughout this process of having West Virginia Sober Living and growing it, helping other folks in West Virginia with their recovery programs, it was very apparent to me that there was, at this point in time, 2014, 15, 16, there were so much white space around the country where there were not treatment centers, and so everyone was struggling to find treatment. There was a few big players in the game, Hazelden, then they merged with Betty Ford,
Oh, wow.
Caron Foundation. There were some of these other organizations, but unless you had commercial insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and or cash to pay 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand to go for a month to treatment, you couldn't get in. So it was very clear to me, like, we need a lot more resources. We need treatment centers that are of high quality for folks with Medicaid. And it wasn't just West Virginia, it was everywhere. So the other thing that I noticed, Laura, is like there was no information for how do you put together a treatment center for addiction and co-occurring mental health.
Okay.
So we were hired by Dr. Kevin Blankenship to help him open up Jacob's Ladder in Aurora, West Virginia. And it was during that process, it was just baffling to me that you couldn't find out anywhere. If you Google search how to start an addiction treatment center, nothing came up. I mean, it would point to an article to, like, NIH, National Institute of Health. I mean, like, here, this is a study on heroin. Like, there was nothing.
Wow.
So to me, and this is the biggest key, and I'm many successful entrepreneurs share this thought, but if you're going to be successful in business and starting a new business and being an entrepreneur, you have to start something that solves a problem. Like, there's if there is a million different processes that can get you to a goal, and going and starting another one, well, then you're just just one amongst a million other entities. So that's a tough road. You got to outmarket, you got to, what I mean? But, like, to really disrupt and do something new and, really have meaningful impact as an entrepreneur, solve a problem. So for me, it was, no one knew how to start a treatment center. I mean, nobody. Hospitals, they would try to figure it out, and it was just, and so I put together, what are the pieces to this puzzle? Well, you have to
because
get
at this point you'd built a model around it. You knew how to do it.
Yep. And so, in the steps in this process, obtain a behavioral health license. How do you do that? You hire physicians, therapists, get them credentialed to the facility, build out a pro forma financial model and startup budget for this, understanding reimbursement rates, and how do you build census, and getting a center accredited by the Joint Commission, and operating, and just all of these steps. Like how do you do this? So we put together that list. I wanted to start this business, so other folks out there around the country that wanted to start a treatment center, we could help walk them through the process. It was impossible to find that whenever we did this. No one was doing it. There was medical billers out there, and I would call them and say, hey, you bill for claims, and I would get deep down the conversation. I would tell them, look, I'm going to be using your services, and I'm really promising client, so. And I would talk to them and say, and they would say, do you have your behavioral health license? And I would say, no, not yet. How do I get that? And like, they would say, well, we don't do that. We bill. I'm like, right. And I want you to bill, but I need to get this license first. How do I get that? We don't know. We just do the billing. And then I would say, but you bill for hundreds of clients. Yes, we're the best. We're the best. And I'm like, can you introduce me to one of your clients? And so I can talk to them about how they got their behavioral health license. No, hire us. And then, So that's my business Ascension was to, from A to Z, we could help you get a program up and running. We would build census quickly and make it successful.
Amazing.
I remember I started writing blogs, and in my blogs, I would keyword them and title them, how to start an addiction treatment center, how to start an intensive outpatient program. And in no time, since there was nothing else out there, if you searched anywhere in the country for how to start an addiction treatment center, you would find us. So our traffic on our website just went through the roof, and people calling. We started in 2016. We were working with WVU on a number of fronts. And then we got hired by a group out of New Jersey to start an outpatient center. And then we got hired by a group in Texas, and then a group in California. And I just remember the first time my phone rang, it was someone, the New Jersey call. I'm like, how did you find us? They're like, well, we searched. And I'm like, almost like, is this for real? Or
Wow.
Yeah.
It actually worked.
It actually worked. Yeah. So we, and building the business, even at this point, I mean, it was still like I had to, recruit people. I wanted really good folks on my team. I couldn't pay them a salary that they were getting anywhere else. So I used part-time, contract payments, and whatever I could do to bring in talent around me to help support me in launching these things. But what's important, I think, in leadership and how I was getting this going and how I was able to recruit and attract folks to join me in this mission is I was very, very passionate about what I was doing. I believed in the work that we're doing. We had a very important mission, expanding this access to care around the country for folks who can't afford it. And I just believe that the leader of an organization has to work harder than anyone in the organization. They need to do every job in the organization. So
yes,
if I'm going to ask somebody to do something at Ascension, writing policies and procedures, editing a document, I've done all that. I continue to do that. You know what I mean? So and I'm living this work. Like I'm helping people get into treatment, like not charging, what I mean? I sponsor guys in the program. I'm
wow.
Because there is no substitute for that work. And even when you've been successful in business, you still have to do it. I mean, it's for me to ask folks to, work a 50, 60, 70 hour week, and then I'm not, doing
You're
that.
not doing the same. Yeah.
So I try to lead by example, and one of the things I've been able to do is get really, really good people. Like my team at Ascension Recovery Services, the team at West Virginia Sober Living, they're just the best. I mean, they're as good as it gets. They're very passionate about, the work that we're doing. Yeah. And, it's kind of funny. I mean, I feel like it's easier to be successful in business today than it was 20 years ago. Yeah. Because people that get into business and entrepreneurs, CEOs, they start and they want to just direct and not do the work. They're not involved in their communities.
Mm-hmm.
We go into so many different addiction treatment centers that are struggling, and someone walks through the front door trying to get care, and they're not treated with respect. They're not, and it's treated, and operated like a prison or correctional institute. And it's like some of the fundamental business principles of, the customer is always right. Well, that applies to healthcare. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
There's in 2023, there's options all over the place. There's a lot more treatment centers in the country than there were 10 years ago,
Yes.
just exponentially more. So you got to treat people well. You got to provide a service in a community that's needed. If there are 10 other centers that provide the same service in a small region, well, you don't need to provide that service. Figure out how we can work together with these other businesses and help complement the services that are there. So what we do at Ascension is very different than a lot of other treatment providers. They look at it as competition, and we get to get in, plant our flag, out market, and we get to
We want the
take
dollars here.
therapists. We want and we just don't do that. So if we're focused on our mission, which is help the most people possible, that involves collaboration. You know what I mean? It's rooted in collaboration. So we like to work with a hospital that are, and have a relationship with a hospital in their emergency department. Let us put a peer recovery coach in your emergency department. Folks come in, they need help for addiction, route them to us, and we can get them, out of the ED, unclog the health system. It saves hospitals so much money.
And it gets people, their patients where they really need to go.
Exactly. It gets people the help that they really need. Then, if we're going to be providing detox and residential treatment, and there's a really good outpatient program in the area, well, let's partner with them. Let's send our detox res to you. Build your business. You know what I mean? If folks need detox res or need to come back, they can come back to our center. But it's not like we have to own everything and keep everything.
Yeah.
So it's just, and you hear really good healthcare leaders talk about this, but it's so true, and it's always been our belief. If you do what's right for the patient, and we want to help people get, we're treating folks with addiction, co-occurring mental health disorders. So if our goal is provide the best care possible for these folks and help them stay clean and sober long term, regardless of financial implications up or down, we're going to be okay. And it's just so true. So that's another unique thing about Ascension, is the work that we've done around the country. We take people without money. We treat a Medicaid population. We provide charity care. And what happens is, in a community, if there's a drug court or there's a hospital, well, they can send everybody to us, because some of these big name centers come in and, well, if they've got Blue Cross Blue Shield, send them to us. Okay, what do I do if I have a Medicaid? I don't know, tough luck. You know what I mean? It's like,
not here.
So you see people go after the high margin, like addiction treatment work, which is with commercial policies or cash pay. But there's lower volume. They're struggling. They're trying to compete against another one. 2 or 3 are in the same community, fighting and stealing each other's employees and stuff. And for us, we go into a community, really solve a problem. And what that lends itself to is the Medicaid MCOs and the payers seeing, here's a group that's in here taking care of the whole population. A lot of these payers have commercial lines and Medicaid lines. So we're in there doing this work. They want to work with us and partner with us. If you have this in-network relationship and even go deeper into looking at alternative payment models and value-based reimbursement, payers want to work with us. Why? Because we care about getting people well. And you're
working on the same team and working towards the same goal.
Exactly. Yep. And we integrate in, because the other thing is working in silos in healthcare is just not effective, and it's not optimal care. So if we get people and we treat just addiction, you come to us, we're going to provide detox. That's it. Well, what if they have hepatitis C? What if they have hypertension, diabetes? It's untreated. So, like, if we don't integrate primary care into what we're doing, how's this person really going to get better? If someone comes to our center to go to be detoxed, but they are experiencing homelessness, they're going to leave detox, have nowhere to go. They're going to be back on the street. What are the odds of that person staying clean and sober without shelter? I mean, it's just almost non-existent. So for me, if I'm a detox provider and that's all I care about, well, they come to us, we bill for detox, and then kind of who cares? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you
our
can.
job is done. Check the box.
Exactly. And it's very, very short-sighted. And we see that all the time. And, people
Wow.
say, well, I'm just a detox provider and I can't worry about all that. Our approach is provide this full continuum of care, get people all the services that they need, collaborating with community partners. And what ends up happening is we become an asset to that community and folks come to our treatment center. So, it's just a byproduct of the good work we're doing helps the business be successful. So
Yeah. Well, but I love that. There's so many lessons that you can take from just what you shared in terms of pairing successful business models, but really focusing on the basics. If you take care of the patient slash customer, depending on what type of business you're in, if you do the right thing, if you are collaborative and you help solve a problem, look at the success you can have. I mean, let's not overcomplicate it, right? You're kind of really
yeah,
focusing on doing the right things really, really well and not making it about who gets the most toys at the playground today and who wins the most and who makes the most money, because then you're getting away from what it's really about, and certainly for you, getting away from your mission.
absolutely. Absolutely. Some stuff I learned early in life that have helped me today with business. As I was a kid and growing up, I studied people, and people's
Mm.
reactions and how they interacted with other people. I've just always been so focused on that, and part of that was, like having obsessive compulsive disorder, and things that would cause me anxiety later in life. But
Yeah.
it was an asset. Like I looked at people's reactions when anything would happen. And so business is all about people. AI is now taken off. So maybe this comment won't be relevant in 2 or 3 years, but
No, I think it'll be even more relevant, actually.
maybe, yeah. But for today, anything you do in
Mhm.
business, it's people. And so,
Yes.
like, at the end of the day, like anything that you're doing, it involves someone's, in interaction with a person to make a decision. So, contracting with a large hospital and health system, you can go and have a great product and numbers and a contract and lawyers and everything. But that doesn't make them sign that contract or get
Yeah.
business. And so many people think it does.
Yeah.
It is, do they like you? Do they trust you? If they sign
Mhm.
this contract, are you going to deliver?
Mhm.
If something goes sideways in this contract, are you going to work together to fix it, or are you going to revert back to the contract? That's how you get deals done. And
Yes.
so I just see all the time and across many different businesses, people think it's just all the product, and it's not. You have to have a good product, but that's the given.
Mhm.
Like if you don't have a good
Mhm.
product,
Right,
game
definitely
over.
get that, yeah. But then,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
then
who's the face of the product. I mean, I know I've made decisions simply based on the type of relationship I've had with an account manager somewhere, and it's like, I know we're gonna have to interact with each other, and if I can't even handle this person in a negotiation before I've even purchased the product, this is
yep,
not someone I'm going to want to have a long-term relationship with. And I'll go with people who I know maybe even their product isn't as superior as the other, or maybe it's
yep,
not the cheapest or whatever, but it's okay, this is someone who actually feels like has our best interest at heart, and I'm interested in working with them because I like them and I know they'll support me.
absolutely. So I mean, I see it all the time. It's like going to a restaurant and the waiter or waitress comes over and you're rude to them and say, look, I've been here before and this is no good. And I want you tell the
Yeah.
chef this and da da da. Da. It's like when they get walk, like, are you really going to get better food? Like, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know
No.
that I'd do anything like, out of
Yeah.
line or anything, but it's like, I'm not going to go over and above for this person. Or,
Yeah.
getting bank financing, and
Mhm.
here's the numbers, here's this, like I demand a loan and here, and it's like at
Mhm.
the end of the day, a bank is going to loan money based on do they believe you're going to pay them back? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They
Yeah.
certainly know that there's risks in businesses. That's inevitable. But
Sure.
are you going to weather that storm and do whatever it takes and
Yes.
make sure that they get paid back first and you do the right thing? Signing a contract with a client, like I said, I mean, things are going to go, um, they're just going to go different than the plan. You make a plan, you
Yeah.
have a contract, you certainly should do that. I'm not saying you
Right.
shouldn't, but as you move forward, that's a plan at the beginning. Everything's going to change. You know what I mean? And so whenever
Hmm.
something happens and it's like you're in, 2 months into the contract and, well, we had to work 5 extra hours this month on this, therefore here's a $2,500 bill. Well,
Yeah.
you can do that, of course, and it's your right. And people do that. Well, we have to. We did the work. We need to get paid. And it's like, and they just don't understand. If I'm nickel and diming a client, they're gonna
Bingo.
go somewhere else. So
Bingo.
do you
Yep.
say, hey, we didn't account for that. Let's learn. Hey, next
Yeah.
time let's
Take it
think
on a
about
chin.
this, or
Hmm.
how do we plan? And not to start out from the bat and just ask for more money, but getting a new client, that's the hard work,
Yeah.
so keep that client, like that's your most expensive,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
provide good service. If you don't make money month 6 and 7, so what? You're going to have this contract for multi-year. Be a partner
Yeah.
with them and help them achieve their goals, and that's one of the reasons we've been so successful,
That's
so
amazing.
um yeah, yeah.
Well, and I just think about back from when you started with 5 years old, looking at those books and just thinking about probably to where you are now. I'm sure much of the journey looks different than what you maybe would have anticipated as a child. And I think about suppose you had just stayed at Ernst and Young and worked up in a leadership role there versus where you are now. And I'm just curious about how your individual and your unique story has shaped your leadership style, because I do feel like once you get past the basics of just managing people day to day, your own leadership style, your leadership brand, your definition of leadership has a lot to do with your style, your unique experiences, what
Yep.
you've learned. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how your life experiences and your recovery has shaped your leadership style and maybe how it hasn't.
Yep. um Before addiction and recovery, and after graduating college and working at E&Y, um, my idea of business success was really on numbers. It was, how many employees do you have? How, what's your top line revenue? Like, what's your, quarter over quarter growth rate and things like
Yep.
that, truly. And it was just, that's what I knew, and
Sure.
SEC regulated public companies have quarterly earnings releases. And it's like, it's very clear that if second quarter is way worse than first quarter, not a good thing. Stock price goes down. So I'm like, okay, build, 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 build.
Yeah.
And for me now in this business and recovery, I measure success by impact.
Mm.
And the impact that we're making. While we opened 30 different treatment centers around the country over the past 3 years, and these centers are still open, operational, and successful, and patients are
Yeah.
getting good care. That's my measure. And in this space, if you're focused on making a big impact, well, the finances take care of itself. Doesn't
Sure.
mean that you don't need to have very solid business fundamentals in everything that you do,
Yeah.
but it's got to be on making a decision. We're not going to take all of the high margin stuff. We're going to do pro bono charity work. We're going to do this because but
Hmm.
it's really, how do we make the biggest impact? For me personally, if you would ask me when I was 23, 24 years old, what my idea of success would be, it would, that statement would have come with this many employees, a business that is in this many,
Yep.
states or countries, this much revenue, earnings, all that type of stuff. And it's
Mhm.
just not that today.
Yeah.
And ironically, our business is successful and we've grown and we've done well. And so you're able to achieve some of those goals. It's just not at
Mhm.
the front of my mind, at all. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's very different. Yep.
Yeah, it's more of a byproduct of really being focused on the right things instead of starting with that as your primary objective and your primary goal to make a certain amount of money or whatever, which I do agree with you. And especially I think that's something that's really common for young people coming out of school is I want to go get a job where I can make X amount of dollars and then
Yep.
I want to be the CEO and I'm gonna start up a tech company and I'm gonna, be a billionaire and have my own jet and it's, focusing as that being the primary objective as opposed to I really want to help people. I want to solve a problem. I want to make
Yep.
a difference. And if you do those things well and do it right, not surprising that you end up being financially successful as well as a result of that.
Absolutely. Yep. And people today, like I see getting involved, and they just don't have patience. Like they want immediate success and
Yes.
immediate, in the days of social media, and you get likes as soon as you post and all of this type
Uh-huh.
of stuff. I mean, drug addiction, alcoholism, it's an immediate quick fix,
Yep.
And so I'll look at people and they'll get into business and they're not, at the top of the industry after 2 years, and they're like, they're let down and disappointed. And it's like, whoever taught you that? Because
Yeah.
it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and it's doing the
Yes.
right thing day after day. And for me, I mean, it was, very, very tight financially, 2013, 14, like for years, you know what I mean? And so there is no substitute for that hard work and putting in the work. And the other thing is, I was always taught and learned from other, business leaders I admired, not to jump around, to job to job to job. And if you have a resume with, 12 different jobs in the past 9 years, like that's
Yeah.
not a good thing. Resumes that come across my desk now, I'm just baffled. I mean, they almost all are 9 months here,
Yep.
11 months here, 12 months here. Like, it's so rare now to see the person that has been 15 years at this company and they started at this level and now they're here. It's very, very rare. And
Yeah.
you see that it's like they don't care about the business. Like, it's just they get another offer that, a little bit more. And then this person, doing all this jumping around, they're not happy with where their career trajectory is going. It's just
Yeah.
impossible to jump into an organization and 12 months later you're running it. And a lot of people think they should,
Yeah. Make that immediate impact. But yeah, you see those resumes and it makes me think, what are you chasing? Because it feels like you're chasing something
Yep.
and you're obviously not finding it at any of those locations, or for whatever reason, your needs aren't being met. So what are those? You bring up something else that I wanted to ask you quickly about, related to when you said resumes and people applying for jobs. You know, Something that I heard you say on another podcast really stuck with me about, I know when people apply for jobs, typically one of the first questions they're going to ask is about your criminal history. And unfortunately, that is going to negatively impact a lot of people potentially in recovery. And it's somewhat ironic to me, because you have a lot of businesses right now that are like, oh, I just need people to show up to work. I just need people who aren't on drugs or aren't whatever. And what's ironic about this to me is we have a whole population of people that are in recovery, want to show up, want to do a good job. And yes, they may have potentially, not all, but some may have a criminal history that, just like you in the story that you shared, prevented you from finding employment. And so I do want to just kind of plant a seed, maybe, because I know I have a lot of business people that listen to this podcast and people who are in hiring type positions. Maybe if we could think a little bit differently about that.
Well, I'm going to give just a valuable business advice to everybody listening. It's for free, but hire people in recovery. And it, when you hire someone in recovery, and this doesn't mean like you're giving someone a management job, two days after they step out of residential treatment. That's probably irresponsible. You know what I mean? But folks that have recovery and they're working a recovery program and they're clean and sober, and they regardless of a checkered, criminal history, like, this is going to be someone that is so grateful. Gratitude is fundamental in recovery. So being honest and transparent, showing up, doing a good job, you get wonderful employees. And folks, different business leaders that I know are, but we're a manufacturing plant, and the risk of someone, what if they use? And it's like, the reality is 10 to 20% of your employees are using on that factory floor.
Yes.
Probably more like 30 or 40. So you already have it, you know what I mean? And these injuries and stuff, you're already having it. So this is a population that is not drinking or drugging and making, work, doing all of this work personally to keep themselves from doing it again. Now, will some folks relapse? Absolutely. It happens. But this is a way that we can give people another chance, build up a workforce. We all need workers. My argument is you're going to have less problems with this group than you are with, just others. And so, it's very, 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 very important. And with felonies and things like that, we'll see, different organizations, and if it's even treatment centers, they don't want to hire someone that has a felony. Hospitals and health systems can't hire someone with a felony. And I'll tell them, this is the person that you do want. 12 felonies,
Mhm.
that's more impressive than an MBA from
A
Wharton.
lot
Like,
of a lot of life experience learned there from that whole experience.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, you don't want to hire someone that's continuing to commit felonies,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's like that to me is like, this person can really, really relate. And
Yeah.
if they're clean and sober and they're not committing crimes in sobriety, which is just really doesn't happen, then they're going to be a big asset to your organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that because I think it's important that organizations, I know for some companies, it's a computerized system that just automatically will bounce someone out of the application process or even from being considered
Yep.
if they check yes to that box. And I just think maybe we need to look a little bit further and deeper into the story behind it as opposed to just casting off. And again, I know not everyone in recovery has a criminal background, but I do think, again, in terms of helping to support people who are in recovery and just the things that you learn in recovery and the transferable skills that come from those lessons that can be applied to the workplace. Always used to say I love to hire people from the military because I feel like you learn a lot. There's built-in leadership training and discipline, and there's so many skills, life skills that you learn in the
Yep.
military that can translate to the business world. I would say same for what people are learning in treatment as well.
Absolutely. Big shout out to the Vecchio family in Morgantown.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the first in our area to hire someone with pending felony charges. You know what I mean? And they said, this is a good boy. We're going to give him a shot. He's worth it. Look at all this hard work he's been through and in treatment. I just remember them being so impressed that he stayed out in Minnesota for a year and went through.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so it's shout out to them. We hire lots of folks in recovery, and for me as a leader, it's creating a workforce that heavily focused on people in recovery. It doesn't have to be, but providing a really a safe, encouraging, positive work environment where folks can
Mhm.
get promoted. I mean, that's really, really important to me.
Yeah.
I always have my employees back. We're gonna make mistakes. Someone makes a mistake, I'm not reprimanding them. Like, we expect to make mistakes. That's how you
Right.
learn, but
Right.
support folks. And so, that's, I hope everybody on my team feels this way. And I've demonstrated it many times over the years, but in an interaction and a client, rude to our staff or critical overly and very, very harsh, I'll fire a client. Like, my workers and their safety and comfort in the job is far more important than a contract.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I think about just with your story and we've talked a lot about the stigmas and stereotypes that existed when you were on your journey and the things that mental health wasn't being talked about the way it is nowadays. We were somewhat pre opioid epidemic, I would assume, and
Mhm.
that certainly shifted things. So I'd like to just close out by asking you, I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about recovery and what that process is like and being on the other side, but unfortunately, I don't know anyone at this point who doesn't know someone that's being impacted right now by substance use and perhaps hasn't made it to recovery yet. And so I would just like to get your perspective on, for people who are in a situation where maybe they have a family member or a friend who they see is struggling, kind of like how that partner sat down with you and talked to you. Maybe it's a leader who has someone on their team that they're seeing some red flags, they know something's going on, and they just feel a little bit helpless about, do I
Yep.
say something? Do I not say something? What do I do? How do I help? How do we get more people into recovery and
Yep.
help and best support them?
Great question. The answer is to ask for help and offer to help someone. And kind of the myth is, whenever you're in active addiction and you're struggling, we call it the best kept secret that everybody knows. So, like, we think no one knows. But
Yeah.
if you're actively using drugs or alcohol, and it's a problem, and it's a problem, everybody already knows, like that,
Mhm.
and they have for quite a while. So
Yeah.
Ask for help, reach out. Some people don't feel comfortable, but most employers have an employee assistance program or a
Mm-hmm.
number they can call, or talk to HR.
Mm-hmm.
Today is a really good time to recover.
Yeah.
Employers cannot fire you if you ask for help. Go to your employer, because we see that all the time. Well, I'd go to treatment, but my job.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is you're going to lose your job and you're never going to have another job and you might die. And
Yeah.
if you're using opioids, it's very likely that you're going to die. So,
Yes.
like, but well, I can't leave because I got this job. And it's like, if you don't get clean and sober and get into recovery, you're going to lose everything else. And people
Mm-hmm.
just, they run that experiment time over time and it has never worked and it never will work. So, if you have someone that's struggling with addiction, reach out for help. There's lots of resources today. You can get on Google and search for, in your state, a helpline. We have
Mm-hmm.
one in, help for WV is the number in West Virginia. You can call and they'll direct you to treatment. Look up Ascension Recovery Services. Call
Yeah.
us. We'll get you help. But there's so many resources. And I ask, families to do research.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of treatment centers out there that, like I mentioned, that just want to, get and take your loved one and provide, but they're not looking at the whole continuum. Get some
Mm-hmm.
options. There's great
Yeah.
programs all around the country. Um, you know, they're like the centers that we work on and develop are wonderful. There's a million other wonderful centers as well. So, yeah, reach out, talk about it, sit down, talk to your loved one. And there's lots of resources for how do you talk to a loved one. But
Mm,
yeah, that
that's
would be
good to
my,
know.
that'd be my word of encouragement. And, you're not alone either. You know what I mean? Because like you do feel like I'm struggling. This is insurmountable. I've got $40,000 of credit card debt. I'm going to lose my job. I got this, and it's like, that stuff is actually pretty easy to overcome if you're clean and sober. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
not clean and sober, it's just going to get worse and it's going to get
Yeah.
worse quicker. And yeah. And the other thing for families that have someone that has been through treatment 4 or 5 times and they're
Mm-hmm.
still, struggling, people do recover. And there's not a magic number. If you've gone to treatment 3 times, 5 times, 15 times, like now you're beyond the point of help. It can be discouraging working with a
Mm-hmm.
loved one, helping a loved one, and just seeing time after time and 30 years of just this in and out cycle. But people do recover, and we never know when that's going to be. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, and it's a very deadly and insidious disease. We lose people all the time. One of the most positive things that I see are families that have lost a loved one. Then they use their voice to speak up and tell
Yes.
more folks. And I do see that helping other people. So
Yeah.
I've lost so many friends and people that I know
Mm.
to addiction. I mean, it's just all the time. And in our programs, or folks that have been in our program and then they've gone elsewhere. It's a very, very tough business, but we do see more and more people accessing treatment, more and more people talking about this. And if we ever lose a loved one, we definitely see the ripple effects of that, and that it helps other people. So anyway, this is a problem that's big enough that it takes everybody. Employers that have a business and are not struggling themselves and never have and don't have a family member employ people in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does take a village here.
Yeah, for sure. And there's opportunities for everyone to step up as a leader in different capacities. And I think I'm so grateful that you took the time to come on the show today, just because I feel like there's so much courage in your story. There's so much bravery. And I think so much of leadership is about taking that step when people say you're crazy and it's going to fail and you might not know exactly what's going to happen. But I think you knew what you were capable of doing, and you kept up with it. You followed through with it. You didn't give up. And now I think about the impact that you've had. It's really inspirational for other people to say, if I can do it, you can do it, and in whatever context makes sense for you as well. And you're really setting the example, and such a positive example for other people to step up in many different types of leadership. So I want to commend you on that, because it's great work, and I'm sure you get tired. And but I know that you have such a strong belief in what you're doing that really probably keeps you going every day.
It does. Well, thank you, Laura, very much.
Yeah.
This has been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll include some information in the show notes, but just to give those resources that you mentioned at the end here. But I do like to do a lightning round at the end of my podcast. Are you game for the lightning round?
Let's go.
All right. So this is 60 seconds to answer as many open-ended questions you have, starting now. What season best fits your personality?
Summer.
Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
I use the green heart for Ascension green, and then the little
Oh,
sprouting bud that means like rebirth, recovery. To me.
I
So
love
those.
it. Very cool. What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Well, I don't read books. That's
I don't have time for that.
let's see. Probably I would say TV show and Seinfeld.
I love it.
I just love that show, and I think there's practical life stuff all throughout it. So
For sure. Yes. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
I own a rap record label.
That's awesome. Okay. That'll have
Yep.
to be round two of the podcast. We'll talk about that. All right. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
Smoothies.
smoothies. Not a bad option though. Good for you at least. That's all. That went
Daily.
quick. The 60 seconds.
Ah,
Well, thank you again so much. This has been amazing.
awesome. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And yeah. Thank you so much. This has
Yep.
been awesome.